Many men think the worst part of the divorce is the beginning. It comes in the day she says it to you or the day you move out. But I assure you it's not. My guest today works with men every day, and she'll tell you that the men don't break at the start, but they fall down in the middle. When the lawyers are done being interesting and it's just you, an empty apartment, and the sound of a kid's bath you're not giving anymore. You're not warned about that part. You're not warned that you'll grieve breakfast, and nobody tells you that you'll do it alone. And you're convinced you're the only man that ever felt this small. Kimberly Laura is a therapist and divorce coach who runs recovery groups for men, and she's here for exactly this. Today we're going to talk about the middle of the divorce, the part men didn't see coming and they don't want to talk about. Kimberly, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you say you call yourself a divorce coach by circumstance. What was the
Yes.
circumstance, and when did it become, I do want to focus more on the men's side. When did it become about men specifically?
Well, I became a divorce coach when I went through my own divorce. I was a therapist. I realized how hard it is for people. And I realized that I needed support going through my divorce, even though I was a therapist. I was lucky enough to become the support person that I needed. As a woman, I talked to my friends. I talked to my therapist. I was okay sharing my pain with people, sharing my life that was now turned upside down. And I realized after I started working with people and men, it's harder for men to have that vulnerability. They don't go out and oftentimes, talk to their guy friends like I might have talked to my female friends, and it's an underrepresented population in the whole divorce arena. I think divorce is really hard on men, but often they're victimized, or often they are demonized by women, by their wives, because they're so hurt. He did this, he did that. But it really takes two people to get a divorce. Not that easy to put all the blame on one person. But I think sometimes men do get a lot of that blame. And I think also they don't have anywhere to put their pain, right? So it's harder. I think it's harder for men to seek help. So I wanted to kind of normalize their pain, not celebrate, but accept their vulnerability and give them a safe place to share their feelings. Maybe a place that they hadn't had before, and to connect with other men. So it's not so isolating for them.
I think when I went through it, I felt really isolated. I had friends who had been around for 10, 15, or even more longer. And they told me that some of them told me that their wives didn't want them to spend time with me anymore because, I might convince them to get a divorce. It was like I was contagious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. It is absolutely isolating.
And again, I think, it's easier overall for women to ask for help. It's more socially acceptable and it's harder for men. So when men have this pain, it comes out in different ways. It comes out a lot of times either in isolation. The rates of substance abuse are much higher for men post divorce or during divorce. Suicide rates are higher. Risk taking is higher. Men are really suffering, but they're suffering in other ways. They might not be crying with their friends.
You said something the last time we spoke on our first call. Women come to you at the beginning, but men show up when it's already hitting the fan. Why do you think that is?
I think that it could be, a couple reasons. I think probably the biggest one in my experience is it's kind of denial. Maybe they're not thinking that, okay, this is really happening. And then when it's really happening, they're like, oh my God, this is really happening. And then the consequences start to fall into place, like financial consequences. Then the practical with their children. I might not see my children as much. Their where they're living might change. Maybe they're going to be in a house by themselves for the first time. One of the big things too is, and I remember I was talking about this, is a lot of times men's support, their partners, their best friends, they are that support for them, right? So their wife, their partner, that's the person they go to when they have, emotional stress or they need comfort, that companionship. And now that person's gone. And maybe that person hates you. And maybe that person is saying terrible things about you. So that really hits home. Like, okay, so now I really need the support of a friend, but my best friend is now might be my enemy. So I think that that reality kind of smacks them in the face too. Like, where do I go?
Your best friend becomes your worst enemy and they know all your vulnerabilities. So it makes it even worse.
And they kind of like, and not in all cases, but a lot of times they tell the world about it because, they might be venting to their friends, but who do you tell your side to? And again, like as much as we don't want there to be sides, there's conflict in divorce and there is side taking. I mean, we know too that like couple friends, they might disappear, right? Because it's the cooties, right? Like you said, like it might be contagious. And, you know, uh, now that he's free, I don't want my husband hanging out because they're going to go to strip clubs and they're going to do this and they're going to do that because he's divorced and free. But that's not the reality. Maybe sometimes. But for the most part, we conjure up these ideas and they're usually not true.
You mentioned denial earlier. What's the denial doing for a man in those early months? What's it protecting him from?
I think it's just, like our nervous systems, our brains can only handle so much. So that's why, when something terrible happens, we dissociate, we black out. It's our body's mechanism of protecting us because we could only take in as much as we could handle. It's like a built-in mechanism to protect. And I think that with divorce, since it affects so many areas of our life, we only can bring in as much as possible. So men might focus on maybe the finances, but they are in denial about that they're not gonna see their kids. It's almost like a colander, like how much can we have flow through at once? And it's really to protect from that overwhelm, and I think men might just approach it more practically and women approach it more emotionally. And I think it's because men don't have that capability oftentimes. Maybe they haven't been taught how to deal with these emotions and how to deal with rejection and how to deal with being the provider of the family to now not, right? Or being the provider through spousal support or your roles are shifting, your identity is shifting. And I think it takes a while to catch up. So I think that that has something to do with the denial too. Like who am I now? I got to figure this out, but it's really scary to figure it out and it's really sad to figure it out and I'm really depressed. So I'm going to just forget about that for a while and I'm going to do whatever.
I think it was that identity shift that shocked me. I didn't realize I was changing I went through a divorce that my basic identity was going to be different, and I don't think I knew that that was okay to even go through that. I think I was just hanging on to that old identity, wishing this pain would go away rather than letting that pain change me.
Yeah. Yeah. And change is scary, especially in divorce. There are so many unknowns, right? We know things are changing. Some things we just don't have control over. Some things are still uncertain. It takes a while for us to kind of land in our new normal, right? There's trial and error. There's a lot of starts and stops. There's a lot of dragging along, right? I don't want this to happen, but I have to. I have to move out or I have to split assets or I have to have these conversations about parenting time, right? There are changes and change could be really, really scary, especially as you're going in the middle of it, right? So kind of back to what we talked about, like why is it so hard for men in the middle? Well, that's when a lot of the stuff is happening. That's when a lot of these hard decisions are being made.
What does hitting the fan actually look like when a guy ends up in your office?
There's usually 2 responses, right? If we're gonna just categorize them in 2. I have some men who are despondent, distressed, depressed. It's really just weighing on them so heavily. And then I have other men who I guess is part of that denial, but their fists are up, right? They are ready to fight. They are combative, they are resistant, they are angry. And I think a lot of it depends on their sense of self and the circumstances. It's really hard for anyone to be betrayed, but I think the level of betrayal, like who wanted it, who asked for it, that hits harder. And the statistic is more women ask for divorce than men. Women are they're the ones who are starting the process. They're the ones that are filing. And I don't know if men are necessarily blindsided, but it hurts. It hurts. Maybe they've seen it coming, but again, that denial is so big that they don't think it will ever happen. But those are the two, either completely broken down or so angry. And we know that anger is usually anger is a covering emotion for all the other emotions, right? So that betrayal, that hurt, that loneliness, that fear, that vulnerability, those are all underneath that anger. So when we boil it down, I think it's that hurt and that vulnerability. Whether someone's crying or bad mouthing their partner and saying, "I'm not gonna agree to anything." It all boils down to hurt.
What are the markers that you should reach out for help?
That's a hard question. I want men to realize that the markers are there. So again, it's recognizing that maybe you're not sleeping, maybe you're not eating, maybe you are overcompensating to do more things, working harder, trying to withdraw from people, not facing your pain, or just feeling lonely and isolated. I think that everyone everyone going through a divorce really benefits from support. I don't want people to think, the listeners to think, "Oh, well, I'm not crying, so I'm okay. I don't need support." Or, "Oh, I'm sleeping okay. Maybe I'm sleeping too much, but I'm sleeping okay." Or, I don't know if there necessarily has to be a certain point to say, "Oh, I need help." I think it's a good idea to touch base with somebody, a friend, a family member, a therapist, a coach, and a support group, just to touch base and to recognize that divorce is a really hard transition. It's the second most stressful event that a person could go through. First is death of a spouse, then divorce, then marital separation. It's hard stuff. So I don't think you have to wait until you're really suffering to just say, "Hey, you know what? This is hard and I need a little sounding board and I just want you to know what's going on."
You mentioned that you work with men grieving breakfast, and that could be, also the bath, bedtime, that ordinary stuff. Why do the small daily fathering things hit harder than the big losses? And for myself, I remember the house being quiet after they'd go back to their mom's house. That was like I had two boys and they were very rambunctious, we'll just say. And, I miss the wrestling and the beating each other up and story time. Why do those small things hit harder than the big losses?
I think because 'cause they're daily reminders and they're constant reminders of what you had and what you lost and how this change it's here, right? If you wanted it or didn't want it or thought you wanted it, but now, it's that transition into that new normal, right? So we start with something, so something ends, and before a new beginning starts, we have all that messy middle, and that's really the messy middle. That's that middle part where you're trying to figure things out and you're realizing that not that you took things like that for granted necessarily, but now that they're not there, you're realizing this is one of those hits to my identity. This is one of those hits to what a typical day looks like. It's loss, right? It's loss of time with your kids. It's loss of being there with your kids. It's loss of having that happily ever after that you probably counted on when you were getting married, right? When things don't go as planned, those are hard.
Tell me about the mango in the lunchbox story. What's really going on in a fight like that?
Yeah. So I have I had a client who they would fight about everything. And one of their biggest fights was because the dad didn't clean out the lunchbox over the weekend and the kid had left like some leftover mango slices in his lunchbox. And the mom was so upset that how dare there be sitting rotten smelly mangoes for a weekend left over from Friday's snack still in the lunchbox on Monday. That was a huge blowout that led to a lot of other pain and grievances coming out, but that's about really control and letting go of control and trusting the other person, having to share kids with the other person. We lose a lot of control when we get divorced. We lose a lot of control. And that pain could easily come out as blaming somebody for, maybe I'm mad at you because you cheated on me, but I'm going to take it out on you because you're somebody insensitive, irresponsible, terrible parent who doesn't even clean out a lunchbox, right? It's never about what we're fighting about. I had another client who, this was before they got divorced. And I use this example a lot. It wasn't about the French fry. The husband would take French fries off of the wife's plate without asking. And again, it's not about the french fry. It's about, like, you're not asking to take my french fry. You're not respecting me. I can't trust you. There are no boundaries. Boundaries are being broken. It's never about the thing. It's never about the mango. It's never about the french fry. It's never about the wet towels on the floor. There's always deeper issues. And with divorce, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain. And sometimes it comes out as mangoes in the lunchbox.
You run recovery groups for men. What thing is there that a lot of men, before they come in, they're afraid of and or they believe, and once they're in the room with you in those groups, that turns out not to be true?
I think back to what we were saying before, that isolation. I think men think I'm the only one that's feeling this way, and there must be something wrong with me, that I'm so affected by this divorce, or, nobody understands how I feel, or I have to be a tough guy. All of these, misconceptions seem to really go away when you're in a safe place where you could share with other people who really understand what you're going through. It's hard if you haven't been through your own divorce to really understand how terrible divorce feels. And yes, it's different for everyone, but there are a lot of common themes, and, sharing about how hard it is to not be able to, do bedtime every night, or breakfast with your kids, or how you're scared of living alone, or how the finances are worrying you, or, what will it look like? Will I be alone forever? That's another big thing that I hear. Sometimes men jump into new relationships before they've really healed because they're afraid of being alone. So, like, how do we navigate those kind of things? How do we, go into our new identities? So, finding comfort in knowing that other men are struggling with a lot of these same issues is really important, just to combat that isolation and that loneliness.
There's two ways I want to go with that. But my next question was going to be about new relationships before men have healed. They're trying to jump into them, and I certainly did that. What are they actually chasing? Is it just to not feel alone anymore? And what's the cost of that?
And that's such a complicated, it's very complicated. I think they're chasing that companionship. I think they're chasing that validation that I'm still okay, right? So that rejection, no matter what, like, if you're the one that initiated the divorce, there's still a sense of rejection. There's still guilt. So that validation, like, I'm still okay. Like, I'm still likable. I'm still worthy. I think that's important. Yeah, or that's an important reason, not a great reason. It's a very unhealthy reason, but I think that's another reason that men jump into these relationships. And then if you're not healed, these unhealthy patterns are just going to keep repeating. You know, you're not going to get You have to go through it to get through it, to actually grow through it, and to become a well-rounded, healthy, healed person that can show up for another relationship. I think it's important to not find somebody that you might repeat those same patterns with, or to repeat those same patterns by yourself, because you're hurt and you're looking for that quick fix to get rid of some of that pain, right? Again, it could be a distraction. I'm in pain, this feels good, I'm gonna go for it, right? It's like that shiny object.
What does that distraction cost them?
It costs them the ability to move forward, and it kind of keeps them stuck. They might think that the price is worth it, but the cost is really not healing and not dealing with those feelings. So they get buried, and then they're going to keep showing up. You can't ignore an elephant in the room for so long, for that long. It costs them really just the ability to have a healthy relationship in the future and to maybe be present with that pain and to again like to go through it. It'll just be a series of maybe failed relationships, and that's not good for anybody.
So let's say a man's in the middle of it. Maybe he's just signed the paper, maybe the paperwork finalizing the divorce. But to me, that's still the middle of everything. You're still
Yeah,
dealing with the fallout. What's
absolutely.
the first, and let's say he's lost and no support. What's the first thing you would suggest to him that he does?
I think reaching out to somebody to get that support. I think it's important for men, especially for everybody, but men especially to be able to name their feelings because if you name your feelings and you're able to describe them, they lose some of their power. The tighter you hold on to these feelings and keep them suppressed, the more power they take and the more that they like take on a life of their own. So being able to just almost befriend them and you don't have to like them, but you can't keep ignoring them, right? It's like your alarm clock in the morning. You might not like it, but you can't keep ignoring it because it's going to keep buzzing or beeping or whatever sound you have, your alarm clock set to. You have to really deal with it. You have to deal with it. So having somebody who will help you realize that these feelings are normal and let's talk about them a little bit. And then you can start to, make a plan to move forward, but you can't move forward until you take care of how you're feeling and what you're scared of. What does that uncertainty look like? What are you in control of? What do we know, right? Because a lot of times we just get like swallowed up by all of the uncertainties, all of the stuff that we don't know. So, what do you know, and what feels authentic? What's realistic, and how do we get there? Right? We might not like everything, but how do we deal best with what we have?
And let's say they're searching for something. They don't quite know what, and they haven't quite found you yet. They haven't quite found your group yet. But what's something they can do? What's a tool you can give them, or something concrete that a man could do this week when he doesn't have that support built in yet, and when the co-parenting or the loneliness is really crushing him?
I think sitting through his feelings, right? If you like acknowledging that one of the things that I always say to my clients is give yourself grace and space, which is like the short phrase of what I'm, trying to explain. Giving yourself that grace and space and saying, this is really hard and I'm okay with these feelings. They're valid, they're true. This is hard stuff. I'll be okay, but right now I need a minute to kind of sit with the fact that I am lonely or I am afraid. And the more you try and push it away, the harder it keeps tapping at you. So giving yourself that grace and space to say, you know what, this does kind of suck. And I'm going to take a minute and then I'm going to, call a friend, take a bike ride, write in a journal, which might be hard for guys. Listen to music, something to kind of ground you.
The grounding for me came in from when I started taking the gym more seriously, and I would go 3 or 4 times a week. I've only just discovered boxing in the last couple of years, and it feels so good to just hit something. It's like you're. I know it's when I first started going through it. It's my divorce. It was uncomfortable as all hell to just sit with my feelings. But going to that gym, putting the boxing gloves on and just beating the crap out of a bag felt so good. And I would sleep that night. Because you're it's almost like you're transferring that anger into the
Yeah,
bag.
yeah,
And it did have a grounding effect. Even we got a dog after I separated, and it was just such a simple thing too, just to take her for a walk every day, even just 10 minutes. And just, I know it sounds so basic, but in that space between when you're still sitting with those feelings, just being outside and grounding yourself in nature I took my kids to the park when I had them. We would kick around a soccer ball, just something physical to move that anger and frustration out. And then you're not taking it out on the other people in the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was such a big thing.
And allowing yourself to do that, right? Allowing yourself to say, I'm going to take time to take my kids to the park, or I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to try something new. That's that grace in that space also. I'm going to take a ride. I'm going to listen
Yeah.
to music. I'm going to, I don't know, whatever, like whatever you find, just being in nature is important. Whatever works for you.
But not sitting there, not sitting on the couch every night smoking weed or drinking. You
Right. Not
gotta
sitting on
you
the
gotta
couch
get
every
out there and
night
move.
and right, right. But the grace is also right. It's that balance between letting yourself feel sad and not trying to just do things to avoid it, but not staying stuck in that sadness. So acknowledging like, yeah, I feel really sad. So what am I going to do about it? Let me go, go to the gym. It's not pushing it anger.
And it's the starting point to moving the anger. I find that sometimes that anger gets still stuck down there and it's still there and you still need to work it out in a different way. So that's where someone like you comes in
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Uh, Not toxic positivity, but what are you genuinely grateful for having gone through your own divorce?
So I always say that divorce was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think that if I were still married, I would be miserable. Like I would be so unhappy. It gave me a chance to get out of a toxic relationship and really find, I mean, this sounds corny, but like really find myself and what my passions are and what I like to do independent of anybody else, just me. And I think that sometimes, especially in not so healthy relationships, we lose ourselves to our partner. And that really happened to me. There's that difference between like your identity and then getting kind of swallowed up in your coupling, in your partnership with your partner. And that was really what was happening to me. I was defined by my roles as a mother, as a wife, as a this, as a that. And then I didn't really know who I was. So I think that freedom and that ability to really like see who I was just for me was the greatest gift.
Where do people find you and how does a man get into one of your groups?
Yeah, so I run a podcast which is called Discussions with a Divorce Coach. You could find me on there. You can find me on social media, but the best way to connect with me is through my website, which has links to all those other things. And it's my name. It's Kimberly Laura Coaching, and you can reach out to me. I offer complimentary consultations. My new men's group is starting in September. It's a 12-week program. All the information is on there. I am physically in New Jersey at the Jersey Shore, but I work virtually with people anywhere, which is nice. So yeah, KimberlyLauraCoaching.com is the best way to get in touch, and we could set up a consultation. We could talk more. And I'm always here to help people, especially men, because again, they suffer so much, but a lot of times they suffer in silence, and I want to change that for them.
Here's what I'm taking from this. Men don't fall apart at the start of the divorce. They fall apart in the middle. And when they grieve that ordinary stuff that you didn't think you'd miss, like the bath and bedtime. And they do it, and when they're convinced they're the only one. And Kimberly's spent years proving that last part is a lie. So if you're in the middle of it right now, if the apartment's too quiet, or you're counting the days till you get your kids back, I've been there, and you haven't said any of this out loud to anyone, I want you to hear that what this whole conversation is about. You're not the only one. It's not even close. And reaching out isn't a thing that breaks you. It's the thing that stops the bleeding. Kimberly's show links will be in the notes. There's a free tool in the description, a curse inventory for naming what's running you. And you can start there. You can start with a conversation with Kimberly. Kimberly, again, thank you. This was a conversation I wish somebody gave me 10 years ago,
Thank you so much for
15 years
having me.
ago.